Neurodivergence as river and constellation. The world has often told us there was only one way for a mind to move. Straight line, clock hand, desk row, a small obedient river trained between concrete banks. Its mouth measured, its current taxed, its stones sanded down until they no longer remembered mountain. They said, "Look here, sit still, do not drift, do not feel too much. Do not hear the room breathing, do not carry 10 thoughts at once like birds startled into the same sky. Do not look out the window as though the clouds are speaking, as though the shape of rain might contain a language older than instruction." And because the world had forgotten itself, it called difference disorder. It called overwhelm weakness. It called tenderness distraction. It called the child who wandered away from noise broken, instead of asking what violence there must be in a world so loud that a soul has to leave it to survive. But there were other worlds. There have always been other worlds. In another remembering, a child who spoke to the wind was not dragged back into silence. The village leaned closer. An elder said, "Listen." A grandmother looked at the child's hands, at the way they hovered over water, at the way they trembled before storms, at the way they could not bear the rough seam in a shirt or the wrong note in a song. And she did not say, "What is wrong with you?" She said, "What are you hearing that the rest of us have forgotten?" There were places where the mind that could not stop moving was not forced into a chair until it learned how to disappear. It was sent to the fields before dawn, where thought could run beside antelope. It was sent to the drummers because some people do not think in lines. They think in rhythm, they think in thunder, they think in 10,000 scattered stars that only become a constellation when someone finally looks up. There were places where the child who memorized every story after hearing it once became the griot. Not because memory was a trick, not because they were useful, but because the village understood that a mind can be a well and still deserve love before it gives another water. But because the village understood that a mind can be a well and still deserve love before it gives anyone water. The griot stood beneath the baobab, full of names, of birth, of roads, of the old songs that knew how to cross a century without losing themselves. Inside them lived 1,000 ancestors walking softly through the corridors of thought. The village did not say, "You are too much." The village said, "Tell us again. Tell us where we came from. Tell us what the river sounded like before it was dammed. Tell us the story we forgot when we began to believe that worth must be earned through exhaustion." There were skylookers too, children who could not stay among the noise, because their minds were always climbing, always turning their faces upwards, always following the strange invisible thread between moonlight and meaning. They were not mocked for living somewhere between earth and elsewhere. They were taught the names of constellations. They were asked to sit beside the fire and speak of what they saw. Perhaps they knew when the rains would come. Perhaps they knew which herbs to gather. Perhaps they knew only that sorrow was arriving before anyone else could feel it. And perhaps that too was holy. Because what if some people are born with their hearts unhidden? What if there are those who cannot build the thick walls the world mistakes for strength? What if they feel everything, the room, the grief beneath a joke, the panic hidden inside anger, the loneliness moving through a mother like a second shadow, the way a loved one is drowning while still managing to smile? What if this was never failure? What if this was the oldest kind of seeing? We live now in a world that punishes the mind for being itself, a world that asks every river to become a pipeline, a world where wells do not flow into one another because someone has built fences around the water and called it economy, a world where people are taught that if they cannot produce, if they cannot keep up, if they cannot force their spirit through the narrow gate of usefulness, then they are worth less. So the child learns to wear a mask, not the sacred kind, not the mask that says there are some truths too large for the mouth, a different mask, the one stitched from survival, the one that smiles at the right time and nods at the right time and learns to make a home inside erasure, a mask full of itchy, a mask full of itchy sensory overload. How many people have been praised for how well they disappear? How many people have spent years mistaking exhaustion for personality? How many people have looked at the person they love and seen only the shape of the wound, never the brilliance hidden beneath all that punishment? I think of the ones we might have saved if we had known, if we had understood that some people need silence the way others need song, that some people speak in spirals, returning again and again to the thing that matters because truth is not a straight road, that some people do not look into your eyes because they are looking into your soul, and it is too much, too bright, too unbearably alive. I think of the person I loved, how perhaps we were both carrying entire rivers inside of us, how perhaps we were taught to apologize for our storms instead of learning how to build each other shelter. What would the world look like if we began again? Not a world of cure, a world of recognition, a world where schools have gardens before they have bells, where children can pace while they learn, where there are rooms for quiet and rooms for movement, and rooms where nobody is punished for needing either, a world where no one has to earn rest, where work bends itself around the human soul instead of forcing the soul to crawl through the eye of work, where the one who notices everything is not called difficult but entrusted with what others overlook, where the one who cannot stop asking why is not treated as a problem but as a doorway, where memory keepers are honored, where pattern seers are listened to, where the person who feels too much is held gently, not because they are fragile, but because they have been carrying what the rest of the world refused to feel. In that world, there are no bursting wells. There are only rivers finding one another. 100 different currents, none of them wrong. The quick water, the deep water, the water that circles, the water that pauses beneath stone before returning clearer. And every river is told, you do not have to become less in order to belong. You were never broken. You were a language spoken in a world that had forgotten how to listen. Thank you.